For Basin, one of the most popular civilizations is the Delhi Sultanate, but that's banned over here, so that's not gonna be available. If it was, B would likely go for that civilization. He loves it. He pioneered the Tower of Victory build on this map as well. Whereas for Demu, he uses multiple civilizations when playing this map. This is one of his favorite maps to play on. But here it is going to be the Malians once again. Malian mirror between B and DeMusliM. B on the right side in blue, and on the left, we're going to have DeMusliM in red.
So, big question to answer. At what point do both of our players deviate from pretty much having the exact same openings, which is what we saw on our previous map? But what can we expect to be different in this case? What about the map generation? Look at how far the golds are. Seems like B's gold is pretty close by. Same happens for DeMusliM, where his gold is just behind his TC. So actually pretty well protected. He's got a forest to play with right next to him. Both of them having pretty similar setups other than that starting gold.
So I think for either of these players, you could take the approach of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because the first few minutes of the game went as planned for them in the previous game with the Malian mirrors. Now, I think if you're DeMusliM, the first place where you're going to have to start rethinking what you're going to do is the timing of Castle Age, because it seemed to be a nice Castle Age timing for DeMusliM, but then again, he was a little aggressive with his army, and he lost the army before he could get the upgrades going, and same thing happened with his archers. So kind of rethinking those timings might actually be beneficial for him. Whereas for B, he saw that DeMusliM is going for a faster Castle Age than he did. So for B, I think it's going to be about rethinking his own Castle Age timing and whether he wants to rush Castle Age a little bit more or double down on Feudal Age, expecting a faster castle from DeMusliM and punishing it.
That's a very good point. It I guess leads into my next question, which is, I wonder what the impact of professional scouts was for B's economy, because it allowed DeMusliM, obviously, given the fight and how it all was kind of coming down around B's TC, and with the play that was happening between the warrior scouts, that he was able to get to castle faster, but he wasn't able to exploit that advantage because of where his military was, which is pretty much out of position. However, B, to compensate for the pressure, quote unquote, that was being put on him constantly, he was at least able to go for professional scouts, pick up the deer, and drop them off at his TC to make sure that he's keeping up production constantly and rallying in order to corner his opponent and not allow Demu to really spiral out of control because of the fact that he had the age up advantage.
Yeah, so far so good. It's essentially the identical build that we had in the previous game, Monster Quarry, with 8 villagers for B, 7 for DeMusliM, the identical build order. And indeed, the big question is how much B can get out of professional scouts, because in the previous game, despite him playing that build, he was beaten to Castle Age by DeMusliM. Now, one of the things that has happened in the previous game was that B was only able to secure 2 patches of deer, which is good value. But when you go for professional scouts, you hope to secure at least 2.5, ideally 3 or maybe even 4 patches of deer. Now, that should be impossible against the Malians, but that's one of the places where B could look to improve. If he could secure 1 extra patch of deer, that would help a lot.
You see the mirror building going on as both players will go for the stable and get their cav up and running. Slight advantage here for DeMusliM, but otherwise pretty equal in how it goes. Warrior Scout upgrade is going to come in for DeMusliM, so he's going to start taking control over the map. So far, like you said, it is pretty darn equal, and I'm wondering again where the divergence point will be. Is there a place for you to pick and prod, or are we going to see more fights around the deer?
I would say at the very beginning, fights should be around the deer patch of B here, because Demo is the first one to move out on the map with his scouts. So he's going to be the one that pokes around the deer of B. And it's going to be once again the same build, professional scouts coming in for B, and DeMusliM just going for double broadaxe. So Demo doesn't want to fearing carcasses, he wants to be the aggressor, and he wants to shut down the deer patches of B. But for the time being, he's going to start around the gold mine, and I'm not against this, to be honest. You expect to have the same amount of scouts as your opponent here, so you can't really take a direct engagement near the deer. But one thing that you could do is harass the gold mine and force B to make a decision between protecting it and ferrying in deer.
Oh, the micromanagement is going to be so important here, as players take a pretty equal amount of damage, but with B rallying his extra scout and now getting an extra one to spawn back home, that defender's advantage always plays well for someone like B in this situation. Demo's got to be careful here not to overcommit. He is one scout lower, has one scout less than B. Otherwise, just trying to keep B cornered. If he can keep him cornered without taking an engagement like we saw on map 1, then things can go well, because his castle age up time was pretty darn sweet and allow him to get pretty quickly up in the right tech and the right composition that he was looking for, and transition into sofas and his archers. But keeping his opponent near the base, a bit more difficult to wall here. I'll give DeMusliM that. Maybe that kind of makes him more comfortable in pushing into B's base.
Yeah, I love this move so far. He's harassing the gold mine, and as I said, that forces B to commit quite a lot of his warrior scouts to defend against this, rather than just ferrying in the deer, and that's a big difference. B's just now bringing in the first couple of carcasses with 1 or 2 scouts from the bottom, so that's going to slow down his food income quite a bit, whereas for DeMusliM, he's just going to play that same cow-based approach that he has had. And it looks like the second gold mine is also being shut down over here. So compared to the previous game, DeMusliM is doing a lot more eco damage in Feudal Age on B's eco.
Trying as much as he can really to get the burn damage down, but because of that advantage and those scouts that were away, which we can see obviously with our observer, that's something that might allow DeMusliM to get more aggressive, and this is what allows him in this case to focus down the mine instead of having to worry too much about the scouts, and might actually take the engagement here. He's looking to drop the numbers as much as he can, but at least force back his opponents to hit the gold, and now it's on fire. The Vil in the back can do something about this, but there's just so much around him. The scouts have been pushed back, and there it is. Very well done, Liquid DeMusliM. Keeping it rolling here and pushing B back, doing damage to him. This is something that he unfortunately was not able to do on map 1, maybe thanks to the map generation.
Yeah, really good control so far by DeMusliM. He's going to shut down the second pit mine, and he's forcing B to commit to a lot of scouts over here. And you see, this basically means that B cannot ferry in a lot of deer carcasses at the same time. And Demu, every time that B falls back, he's going to throw a couple of torches, start burning down those mines, and that's going to start showing on the passive gold income as well.
I'm loving the expansions in the meantime. One thing that a lot of players will neglect is keeping up their eco work as well as the harassment. And right now, DeMusliM is not only successful in the harassment point, but also keeping up his expansions and making sure his gold is all set properly, doing damage, taking down houses, pushing through into the warrior scouts. But he's got to be careful not to overcommit. The one thing that he has very much going for him is that he's done a lot of damage to B's units. Now, despite being split off, might be able to rally and push down his opponent's warrior scouts. They're still playing around the forest. They're going to have to fall back to their TC for some safety. But this is also exposed with how little defensive measures can be put up. And the moment DeMusliM sees an opening, he instantly fires off and does more eco damage. This is beautiful to see of the micro.
Exactly, it's chip away damage. Every once in a while, he does a tiny bit of damage on the eco, but it's starting to show. Food income is a lot better for Demu, and that's showing in the scout numbers as well, 27 versus 22. And that means that B can only take suboptimal engagements over here over and over again. If he doesn't fight, he's losing his pit mine. If he does, he's going to lose the engagement and his scouts.
trying to surround one another here, but each player has an advantage on one side of that engagement, but not the other. And DeMusliM is still rallying. Despite being so far away from his opponent, he's still able to put up the numbers and keep B on his toes. More chip damage, like we say, it's just an extra second, but that second is going to help him out. There we go, trying to spread around the concave and surround B's scouts. At least that SimCity here is helping out B in his defensive maneuvers, but how long can he keep it up here? Being pushed away, there it is. You want to use that open glade to really play around your opponent and wrap around the scouts. The Warrior scouts are taking a lot of damage for B. Still 3 and below, losing as many scouts as possible, but still DeMusliM pushing him away from home into more of an open space. DeMusliM has taken a lot of damage on some of those scouts, but in general it feels like despite this, he's done a decent amount of eco damage and was able to build up his own eco back home.
Yeah, the big thing here is that he banked up resources for Castle Age. The two players were doing the exact same thing composition-wise, or, well, if you can call this a composition, they were just both going heavy on the scouts. But the advantage that DeMusliM has built is that he can go to Castle Age while maintaining this pressure, whereas on the other side, B is still in feudal, and this is where this could get very concerning for B, because he's gonna have to double down on the scouts. He can't afford to take a step back, because then he loses his pit mines. But if he doubles down on this, DeMusliM is going to beat him to Castle Age, and when the first couple of Donsos possibly come out, that could be problematic, because here, I think for DeMusliM... Oh!
Don't lose out on your Cav. You're so close to Castle Age. Don't make the same mistake, but he's still winning it out. It's pretty equal in numbers. B survives just a few more, at least keeping up the equal numbers between the two players.
I think this is a slightly different scenario here for DeMusliM. I think he's fine trading cavalry because he has done a lot more damage than he did before. I think here he's just going to make a hard switch into whatever, honestly. He's going to go for the tech still because he still has 20 warrior scouts. But here, trading off the cavalry and feudal could have been okay, because he can still make a harder switch with the frame garrison, given how much damage he has done to B.
The switch already happening from B side, and that plays into it. DeMusliM can switch around and be comfortable with it, as we're already seeing sofas being brought up by B. More and more spawning as we speak, and more should come in from DeMusliM's side here. And for once, we see it in our game where B is trying to take the initiative and wrap around his opponent's base, maybe able to snipe out one of those pit mines if he's able to spot it, but he passes right next to one of the more exposed ones. Vils are going to be forced away here on the gold. There's no way for DeMusliM to take the engagement unless he's fighting under the TC, which he's going to have it for just a moment. But again, the positioning of mine and so being so close to the TC is helping DeMusliM out. Fortunately, losing all the cav cleared out by B surrounds him right outside of the TC.
Offense is the best defense, and I love what B's doing right now, realizing that he needs time to get to Castle Age. We'll just go straight for the base of DeMusliM, and DeMusliM has to fight this. He's got 11 scouts somewhere else, but they're not here to defend the gold mine with, and B is more than happy to take this because this distraction is paying off big time. B is going to get a free ticket into Castle Age, and just like in the previous game, DeMusliM was faster to Castle Age, but the return value was kind of missing, and B is going to catch up without any major issues.
And that's the crazy part, because there was an entire mine that was lost by B, and yet he's still doing work on the other side of the map. Double advantage here in the military value, or military strength, really, of B, and the mine is going to be raided. The Vils are being forced back, and how many will be lost here in the engagement? A couple will go down, and even more actually here, as B is just using the SimCity to advantage, surrounding Vils, taking them down, as many of them as possible, and half of the eco now for DeMusliM is basically pulled away. Can't really do much about it. And on the other side, he's trying to go into his opponent's base, but reinforcements have rallied for B. We're able to push back whatever DeMusliM had. There it is. The age up will happen for B. He's in Castle Age. He's going to be able to put himself into a better position, but despite it all, the pit mine still survives. The eco damage, whilst present, was not massive, and now both players are equal in many ways. They're normalizing our mash as we actually have a mid to late game transition.
Yeah, exactly. Given the circumstances, B's position is admirable. It looked pretty grim, especially when Demu went to Castle Age. B was essentially out of resources. He didn't have a decisive military advantage, but through that raid, he bought himself time to get up to Castle Age. Now he's getting imported armor, and he's going very heavy on the sofa department. DeMusliM is doing the same thing over here, so there should still be a bit of an edge for Demu. But the big difference is that for DeMusliM, it's right now once again a very one-dimensional unit composition, just cavalry, mostly sofas. Whereas for B, he's once again going for a combination of units. He's going to have sofas supported by Dunsos this time.
He's going to have extra javelins being brought out. How many archers can you build up in the meantime, DeMusliM, without losing too much cav? Another raid continues. Maybe more damage to be done by B. A 6 vil advantage for B right now. So that's going to start hurting bit by bit, as also you're down in military. You're constantly being chased about. It's a role reversal from the first, I guess, 5 or so minutes of this matchup here in the second half. And the second mine has been spotted. That actually might be a great spot for B to rally his cav around and snipe the exposed pit mine on the left-hand side. Whereas for B, he's just looking comfortable back home. He's building up. He's getting his eco properly set up. He's getting his upgrades done in the meantime. So preparing himself and amassing troops for an eventual fight.
Yeah, this is the concerning thing for DeMusliM right now. He's going archers. I think he's lacking poison arrows though. So those archers will do minimal damage against the sofas. They will be fine against the Dunsos, but the problem is that Dunsos will just throw their javelins, dish out a bunch of punishment on the sofas of DeMusliM, and if DeMusliM loses his frontline in the blink of an eye to those Dunsos like that, then those archers won't be able to stop the sofas. So I have a gut feeling that this composition for B is going to dominate what DeMusliM has. It's a little tricky, could come down to micro, but if I was in DeMuslim's position, I would be worried with the army that I have.
I mean, looking back at map 1, we can do that because of the fact there was also a mirror matchup for Malians for both players. We can look back at that and say, yeah, DeMusliM had the proper mass and maybe the proper units for the situation. It helped him out that he was microing properly, that he was putting his cav up front, buying himself time. But that was just it, only buying yourself time and not actually gaining any real ground in the map. B eventually was going to be able to overproduce you and overpower you. And here, he just keeps it rolling. Raid in the back, keeping the Muslims' attention away from this main ball, and suddenly half of the Muslims' eco is paralyzed for 15 seconds. Now it's a lead for B in both eco and in military. He's constantly being chased around, but he's constantly pulling the attention away from this main fight that could happen and be advantageous for B.
Yeah, it's just a dance of cavalry right now. Sofa numbers are very close, but this is where it gets alarming for DeMusliM. He has 15 archers. On the other side, you have 30 Dunsos, and I don't think that he has ever seen them until this very moment. This is the moment where B shows the Dunsos, and this is where the oh shoot button really starts to kick in for DeMusliM, because he's like, oh boy, that's quite a few Dunsos to deal with, and I only have 15 archers.
And it might not be enough in this case. You need double, maybe triple even that amount, if we're also counting the fact that there's cav that you need to deal with, and the sofas can just engage and survive the early engagements, but way more tanky than you'd expect. There it is. They're doing so much damage and rolling over the Muslims' cavalry here. Very well done, but how long can the Demu really keep up in this fight, keeping up the raids? as we speak, going up against the villagers that are maybe saturating way too much on the gold that's overexposed. Like you said, Lita, aggression, that attack is the best defense.
Yeah, it's 40 Dunzos, and DeMusliM is still at 14 archers only. He's going very heavy on the cavalry department. But behind this, DeMusliM has been losing villagers, quite a few villagers actually. If you look at the bottom left, 18 workers killed by B in this game. Most of it has happened in that initial cavalry raid, but every once in a while, B was able to chip away with a couple of villagers, and now it's showing. And now, not just the fact that B's army is looking better than the one from DeMusliM, Eco is now substantially better for a blue player.
And you could let go of the extra cav because you have so much variety in your army as B. You can send 2-3 cavalry around, your flanks or your opponent's flanks and pick away at a few vills because there's just not enough critical mass of archers, so they won't be able to clear out your spearmen in the meantime, and you're gonna look pretty darn comfortable. Dunzos keep it rolling with some cav in support. And I love the fact that B is splitting up his army in a way where he uses his manpower advantage to keep up the pressure on DeMusliM. But now he's got to fall back. He can't allow himself to lose too many units before main engagement. And what does he do in the meantime? He pushes into the base, trying to pull away whatever's left in reinforcements and hitting cav before they get to an even bigger mass, hitting villagers at the same time. Big fight in the center though, but it's mostly B falling back, sacrificing a few units. They don't really matter much to him just because the eco advantage has been 15 plus villagers for the past 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, now B is also going for his own archers. I think he's lacking poison arrows, something that DeMusliM has, and that can be a big difference maker, especially with 30 plus sofas on the field for DeMusliM. But when poison arrows kick in, it's essentially identical unit compositions, but B has a much larger and much more efficient economy. So from that point on, that should be advantage B. But there's a good chance over here for DeMusliM to do damage, because that's a lot of cavalry moving in.
Look at that, villagers found exposed in their own mind. Finally, we're seeing this counter-aggression from DeMusliM. Maybe it's been a bit lacking after those first 8 or 9 minutes of the game, but you can't really do much against the vills. They're constantly being surrounded by their own cavalry to protect them and splitting off a few extra units. But B has such an advantage overall that he can afford to lose a few vills and a few units in general, military units, just to keep up the pressure on Demu. Vills back on the mine, and big fight though happening off the screen. Spearmen all being taken out here as we speak. So Dunzos, finally something rallying back to them to help them out, but maybe a few too many lost. A lot of sporadic fighting all over the map.
Yeah, now we have so large armies that the players are operating 2 or 3 groups, and this is looking better and better for DeMusliM. That's 40 archers that he has on the field with poison arrows, and you see that's an upgrade that takes a lot of time to research, so B is just now finishing up. Still though, B has 10 extra units over him, and I guess what's more worrisome for DeMusliM is that B's got 38 sofas on the field, 25 only for DeMusliM.
He's going to have to rely on any archer mass that he has. There's the big fight happening, but there's just not enough to block and really body block the archers in the back. They keep on firing from both sides. And stretched thin, DeMusliM is going to have to fall back. There's just not enough bodies to keep up with B, who's watching over him. 89 versus the 50 of military. Not working out too well here for Demu. Still only thinned down to archers, and he's so far away from home. Reinforcements are going to take ages to get there, and this might spell the end for us here in 2 Malian games, 2 Malian mirrors that we've had back to back, the first time in forever, really, and whatever new civs in AoE4. The entire army wiped out, and there it is, all done and dusted. 2-0 victory. Very well done by B.
Oh, so similar games over here in game number 1 and game number 2. But this one, it came down more to the fact that B was able to cut into the eco of DeMusliM. You can see every once in a while he chipped away with a couple of villagers killed. especially at like minute 19, which was the second large raid, but also just before him hitting Castle Age with that large scout raid, he did deliver a big punch on the eco of DeMusliM, and in a mirror matchup, that's a loss that you can ill afford, and that was essentially the downfall of DeMusliM. The two players going for near identical unit compositions, but DeMusliM having to do so with a substantially weaker eco, in the end falls 2-0 to B, which means that B moves on to the next round, keeping his hopes alive for making the top 4 of Golden League 2. Whereas for DeMusliM, his final position is going to be the 9th here in Golden League 2. Had some good runs, but fails to crack the top 4, will finish the 9th place.